All right. Are we on the air? My mic's up. My mic's up. All right. Good evening, everyone. CMPRadio.net, the voice of Chester. Welcome to the wonderful world of Rich Blye. Always on Mondays at 7 p.m. on the voice of Chester, CMPRadio.net. All right, let's get right into it, folks. As I told you before, as you've seen my live from earlier today, I made some discussions about my special guest here, who I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. Before I introduce my special guest, I just want to make sure that there are some ground rules that are set for this segment. As you well know, I said that we were going to talk about this big, beautiful bill, and we were going to break down some components of it because a lot of people have a lot of questions. There are a lot of speculations. There are a lot of false information being put out, misinformation being put out. So before we get into it, anyone that comes into this segment today, please refrain from anything political because this has nothing to do with the left, the right, the D, the R, or anybody's feelings about that. What we're here to do with this segment is not to toss around blame and say who did what and who shot John. In this segment today, we will specifically talk about your concerns or what you need to know moving forward with this big, beautiful bill. So with that being said, let me introduce you to a very good friend and family member of mine, Miss Rachel Collins. Give her a big hand, everybody. Big hand, big hand.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
All right, Rachel, let's go. Let's just jump right into it. What's the biggest changes that are happening right now with Pennsylvania welfare programs?
Sure. So I wanted to first just give some background on myself. I was a caseworker at the County Assistant's Office in Chester from 2015 to 2019, and I worked directly with the Medicaid program in my current role, my current job. So I do have a background in processing these applications. I was the one processing these applications, making these eligibility determinations at one point, and I do keep up with regulations as they change. So that's my background on this. So to answer your question, the biggest changes right now are shifts in income, resource limits, reporting requirements for certain groups of people receiving benefits.
So I've taken a lot of different calls and texts and stuff like that. Messages are coming to me. I want to start with the disability side of it. A lot of folks we know are disabled in Pennsylvania for one reason or another. And I'm not going to get it again. I'm not going to get any individual medical history of folks, but how does that apply to them with their disability benefits?
So right now, there's no changes being made to any program that somebody with a disability is receiving through welfare. Whether that's food stamps, the SNAP program, or Medicaid, there is no proposed changes to somebody who is disabled.
Okay.
Disabled meaning Social Security has determined you disabled, or the Harrisburg Medical Review Team has determined you disabled. There's certain folks that are not Social Security approved, but they are disabled by Social Security guidelines and just haven't been approved for one reason or another. Those same people could submit their medical information to the caseworker, who can submit it to a team of doctors in Harrisburg to make a determination.
Okay. All right. So for those who are currently under disability for whatever reason, your status does not change. So I guess congratulations for that part. Let's move on. Let's talk about some of the significant changes from the shifts with the income eligibility and getting the money, because I know a lot of people are concerned about that. My money.
Absolutely. Okay. So the changes again are mostly being made, or pretty much always being made, to the group of people called able-bodied adults without dependents, so also known as ABODs. These are people who do not have a disability, do not have a child. So they're between the ages of between the ages of 18 and 64. So one change being made for them is the age went from 54 to 64. So if you're between the ages of 18 and 64, you have to work 80 hours a month to qualify for food stamps now. Previously, there were some waivers to these benefits, SNAP and Medicaid included,
right,
that our county, because we're considered a poor county, were not in effect. We had waivers in effect.
Okay, so why is Delaware County considered a poor county? What does that mean?
So Delaware County is considered a poor county because more people in Delaware County than not are below the federal poverty line. The federal poverty line is a number that's assessed every year by the federal government, and it gives you an amount of money that if you make less than that, you're below the federal poverty line. So more people in Delaware County, Philadelphia as well, and I believe Montgomery County was waived. Mm-hmm. More people are poor than not poor in those counties.
So this is a yearly revenue stream that comes to Delaware County because of this baseline?
So it's a yearly test that's done, but we were being waived from certain requirements because so many of our citizens were poor. They were exempting us from these requirements.
Okay.
And now with the change, with the BBB, there's no waived counties. Every county is treated the same. Every county has to abide by these rules.
Wow. So let's talk about Medicaid.
Absolutely.
What should people in our community know about qualifying now?
Sure. So the changes being made to the Medicaid program are again targeted at able-bodied adults without dependents. So all of the categories of Medicaid people can be in outside of being an ABOD have not been touched. So children under 18, pregnant women, 1 year postpartum, all of the requirements that were previously in effect are still in effect.
Okay. So let's hold on. Let's
Yeah.
we got to make sure that we give our audience in spoonfuls. So again, those items that you just mentioned: pregnant women, postpartum up to 12 months, children under 18, parents and caregivers, or no?
So there are changes to the parents and caregivers if your child is over 14 years old.
If your child is over 14. Okay, so but we're going to start with those top two that we just mentioned. There are no changes, correct?
No changes. The current eligibility tests are the same. So if whatever the income limit is, so if you look at here, the income limit for a pregnant woman is less than 215% of the federal poverty line. So that means if you're 215% above being poor, as long as you're under that amount, then you qualify. So I didn't want to give the actual numbers, because household sizes affect it. There's different deductions caseworkers can give based on your income and your resources, your expenses. So it would get a little confusing, but that is what you have to be below to qualify as a pregnant woman.
Right.
So no changes to pregnant women, no changes to kids. The same income tests apply to kids. So if you look at the children under 18, the income guidelines are between 133 and 185% of the federal poverty line.
Wow.
As the kids' ages depend on that.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So this was all in effect. This is all remaining the same. Another thing that's remaining the same, I'm going to skip the stuff that's changing.
Okay.
Are again the disability categories. So if you look at the adults 19 to 64 with a disability, adults over 65, you don't have to have a work requirement. Your reporting remains the same as it was. Regular redetermination, full benefits, and then the income guidelines are the same.
Okay.
Same thing with long-term care Medicaid, home and community-based services. If you're getting home health care paid for by the state, no changes, same income limit, same resource limit.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there on that. That elderly, disabled, long-term health care is very crucial right now, because a lot of folks, especially here in Chester, are taking care of their loved ones at home.
Correct.
Especially with the implosion of our hospitals and our Crozier medical system. Right now, a lot of folks who are in this field had to really, get in a life preserver and rush to folks' aid with this. So I know that this BBB, with that in mind, especially with that, because I have folks asking me about that specifically, will there be changes? And that's good to hear that there will be no changes for that category. So
that's correct. There's no direct changes to the home health care reporting requirements, income resource tests. I just want to make it, clear that there are the structural changes that are being made over time pose challenges to all the programs at some point or another.
So what this means is that this is not set in stone, that as they advance programs and as they look at it, as they do reviews, they'll probably be able to change certain internal policies within this BBB budget law.
Correct. So I would definitely recommend, following credible sources that are able to break down this information. You know, obviously sometimes we go on TikTok or Facebook and we're not getting accurate,
Yeah,
but
folks, I just want to say this. I know that, social media is a great, tool to, get sources of information. Again, I'm not an expert, and I've always said that. But what I do is that I go get the information and I go get the experts so that way you can have tangible results for your search. So that way it's just not social media bombarding you, that you get live people who understand how the system works, so that way you can approach it with confidence and not with fear. And that's the reason why on the wonderful world of Rich Blye at cmpradio.net, we're having this conversation with Rachel Collins. Let's go, Rachel. What's up next?
All right. So so I was going to say something about staying in touch with what's changing. So the policy handbook for the welfare office for food stamps, for Medicaid, for cash assistance, for any other program is public knowledge. This is not a secret.
Right.
Their policy handbook that they use to make eligibility determinations is on the internet. You can Google policy handbook, long-term care, policy handbooks, food stamps, Pennsylvania.
Right.
If you go on there, you can see updated information. They update it every year for some limits. They update some stuff by the fiscal year, but the information is there. So I would suggest reading it. Looking up some of the things that they put out, blasts of changes and that kind of stuff. Staying informed.
So again, we need to implore folks to get on this website and check it. Monthly?
Yeah, you get they do a lot. Some release, like you'll see different links on there that are to new information. I'm committed to working with the county assistance office with my friends that are still there to try and get some of the information they get from Harrisburg.
Right.
Because that's what I wanted to get into is there's no guidance from Harrisburg at this moment of how this is going to play out.
Right.
These are the rules. The bill was passed. It's going to happen going forward. But the people who are on food stamps right now, on Medicaid, who are able-bodied adults without dependents, that need to work 80 hours, that are not working 80 hours, are kind of in limbo. So I would just suggest, trying to get your paperwork in order as soon as possible to prove that you're qualifying before you get to your redetermination or before they come out with a plan.
Right. So again, it's always about having your bag packed at the door, folks. So that way you don't have to, rush and sort through things. And we need to implore to each and every person listening or watching that we want you to get ahead of this. It's here. It's happening. I know people are upset about it. I know why you're upset about it. I know who's upset about what. That is not going to solve our problems. We need to come up with some really common sense solutions that everybody can do if you follow with what Rachel's putting down, or if you need to get more information, you want to talk to your caseworker even more to listen to what she's saying. I guarantee you that what you're hearing from Rachel, you probably won't hear from most people. But let's go, Rachel.
So let's get into that though. So I worked at the county assistance office for 4 years. I'm going to tell you they're overwhelmed. Yes. They're overwhelmed now. They're human beings. They're not a computer system. They put the information into a computer system, but they're not a computer system. The system goes down for 2 days. They're not in the industry where I am, where I can go home and work on a Saturday. When it's 5:00 on Friday, they're done. Right. And there are people who are, your DMV disgruntled workers, but most of these people are just regular people working this job and do care.
Right.
I think that the majority of caseworkers do care. I think there's limitations on what they're able to do.
Right.
And that's where I'm concerned with how much work is going to hit them at once. And it might, cause a positive in people's benefits being closed.
Right.
But one thing I'll tell you that is going to happen, and we should watch out for, is when your benefits do close in error. So say you get your renewal, you don't send in your renewal, right?
Right.
They close your benefits. You file your appeal, whatever you do while you're still trying to get it open. If you're emailing your caseworker and you're calling your caseworker and you're calling the customer service number, they're trying. Right. I don't think they're not trying, but all that time you don't have the benefits.
Right.
And there are some categories that will keep your benefits open pending your appeal, but these are human beings. You got that. You have to account for that.
I think also I want to say this, and I've had this experience with a lot of folks who I've had to either take to a welfare office or sit down and tabulate the information for them for whatever reason. but I've also experienced folks coming to me last minute to get your status. Folks, we no longer have the luxury of procrastination.
Correct.
Okay, and I need to address that very, very clearly. I'm a proactive person. That's just me by nature, and I know Rachel is too.
Absolutely.
But we cannot implore enough to you that with the information that we have and the connections that we have and the ways that we can help, we can't do things short notice because you're doing things late. You have to get up and do your stuff on time, please.
So exactly. So one of the ways you can do that is going on Compass. So Compass is the online portal to submit Medicaid applications, upload documents, get your notices on there. There's actually a Compass app. Go on there, upload your stuff. You can see if they're asking you for more information. If they send you a notice asking for more information and that due date comes and goes, they're allowed to reject your case or close your case because that information is what they need to determine your eligibility. And if they don't have that information, they're no longer able to pull from other sources to try and determine your eligibility.
Correct.
So they have a system that connects with banks, connects with the IRS. They can see some stuff. But with these changes, they're less able to pull from those sources. They need proof on paper. They need proof of if they're asking for a bank statement, they need your bank statement. If they're asking for your pay stub, they need your actual pay stub.
Right.
They need the deduction shown. They need the gross income because that's how they go off of.
I think that for the folks that are listening and folks that are watching, I think it should be a good habit where these documents that they're going to ask you for all the time. It should be a good practice to maybe get those items printed out monthly.
Correct.
And have it in a binder or have it in a folder or have it, attached to a note on your phone. In this day and age, and I want to say this very gently, folks, because again, this is not about beating down about the BBB or beating down about the people. We are here to help. But we have to take a common sense approach to the ABCs, actions, behaviors, and consequences. This is actionable, this BBB. The behaviors and our approach have to match the actions. This is a very aggressive piece of legislation.
Correct.
It's very pointed piece of legislation. So we just can't be willy-nilly about our reactions and how we're going to respond to it. We need people to understand that this is priority because we all need to know the way. If you find the way, it needs to be shared. If Rachel finds the way, she's going to share. She's going to send stuff here to cmpradio.net, and that's going to be shared. But we need you, the community, also to share your successes and how you navigate things because we're all in the same boat with not having a hospital, with not having a doctor system, and with this big, beautiful bill. So it's going to take all of us. It's not just a DNR thing. I really need us to get off of that for this. This is about health. This is about wealth. And this is about life. And that's what I'm about 100% on this planet. Okay? So let's get to the next thing. Let's talk about this what are some of the new cuts that folks do have to worry about?
So with the BBB, there's not necessarily outright cuts to programs other than what I'm talking about with cuts to the the able-bodied adults without dependents.
Right.
There's not actually cuts. Nobody's getting cut. It's just the people who don't qualify are not going to qualify. So they're not slashing any entire program. They're not, they're just saying they're enforcing time limits. They're enforcing the work requirements that were already there before. They're just enforcing them. So the problem is over time, there's other administrative changes that are on the back end, error report rates. So one of the things is what is that?
What is that? I mean,
so what it means is that the federal government is sharing in paying for food stamps. The federal government and the state of Pennsylvania share the liability of paying for the food stamp program. Okay. That's how it works right now. That's how it's designed. So there's the error rate at which people are not reporting correctly. People are, either outright fraudulently reporting, misreporting accidentally, the caseworker is not entering it correctly. Mm-hmm. There's an error rate. If that error rate exceeds a certain percent, which right now it does for Pennsylvania, right, some of those administrative, the people who manage it is going to go away from the federal government and go straight to Pennsylvania. So if the error rate continues at the rate it's continuing at, the federal government is not going to pay for the food stamp program. The state of Pennsylvania will bear the burden of paying for the program. Where are they getting the money from? That's where, like, when you talk about cuts over time, there's going to be more people losing eligibility, more cuts down the line because of the administrative cuts. So what I would encourage with that is just making sure you're reporting correctly, making sure you're giving the information that you have as complete as possible.
Well, see, I've always been trying to understand administrative costs with people that we have elected to do a job. Why are we charging for the administration to do the job that they're getting paid to do anyway? So, I mean, like, to me, that part makes sense because I've often said this at the lower level with municipalities, cities, and governments. And, you know, I'd still believe the same thing with the state. I think it's just, you know, hey, administrative costs, $200,000. Well, administrative costs, you already have a operating budget.
Right, right.
You know what I
And
mean?
this is what a lot of this logic is taking the federal government out of the picture. If the state, and the same thing, there's something called provider tax, which applies with how, you know, hospitals and nursing facilities receive tax breaks. And what they're trying to do is get the federal government out of the picture.
So do you think that even, like, you know, and this is just a segue into this, do you think that with this particular bill, with the money and the way that they're handling with the states, that they're trying to give back states rights?
I would say that's a little bit about giving the states the autonomy to run their own programs, but there definitely is a big part of it that the federal government does not want to be involved. They don't want to fund it. All of the changes right now are to federally funded programs.
Right.
So the Medicaid expansion under Obamacare is what gave all these extra people eligibility.
Right.
These able-bodied adults without dependents, you know, gave them the eligibility for Medicaid. All these other programs, all the other disabled people, children, pregnant women, were always eligible for Medicaid.
Right.
The Obamacare expanded it, and what they're doing is kind of reeling back the expansion, assuming in an effort to conserve federal funds, because these are federally funded Medicaid categories.
Right. But unfortunately, and this is the direction and we have to speak on it, it's geared towards people who not only did need medical coverage, but those who probably wouldn't get medical coverage because of a certain status. Is that fair to say? I mean, and again, folks, this is not politics. This is about human life. And I'm going to ask the direct questions that people ask. It may not be something you enjoy, but other people are listening, and I'm going to say what needs to be said. But go ahead.
Can you repeat the question?
So what I'm saying is that a lot of folks who are going to be scaled down from these extra from the Obamacare administration as far as enrolling them in medical programs, where are these folks going to go to get the health care that they need? Because some of these folks are like, you know, they're not in a special category. Like I hear from folks, you know, they want to complain about the LGBT community or transgender or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Some of this community are black males. Some of these communities are white women. You know what I mean? So
it's a good question, because there's a lot of people who are, one of the examples is a lot of people who are being, you know, released from prison, right? You're being released from prison. You have a criminal history. You're coming out on the street. You get one token, right? They send you on your way, and that's it. So these are able-bodied adults without dependents sometimes, and so, you know, where are you getting released from prison and going immediately to a job?
Right.
Like, so there are people that are going to fall through the cracks. To answer your question correct, there are people who are going to fall through the cracks. There's people who are going to have criminal records preventing them from getting a job that is 80 hours a month.
Right.
Now, I work a 40-hour-a-week job, right? People have full-time jobs. Some people don't.
Right.
Some people don't have, you know, the qualifications to get a job, or they have a job and they can't afford transportation to get there. Those kind of things. I think that people are going to fall through the cracks. That is a given.
Right.
And it's really a community rally kind of thing to help.
And this is why I think it's very important for us to get involved with our state representatives and our and our local senators.
Correct.
Not so much to go to them and complain and ask them what are they doing. It's more of, we have a community of professional individuals who can and will care if you involve us in a honest communication of where we could put certain resources or help direct people to certain resources, and not make it so partisan with what
Correct.
we're doing. Part of the
Correct.
problem, and I'm going to say this very gently, like I said, there's no politics on this, is that we do have folks that are playing these party politics with people's health, with folks' health. And that really needs to change. The hate that you give is the hate that you receive.
Correct.
Okay?
At this point, it's done.
Yes,
At
it's
this
done.
point, it's done. If you're fighting on social media, that's not going to do anything.
Nothing.
And to your point about our elected officials, they are elected to serve us.
Yes.
They're elected. We are electing people in our local elections, which we always say they're more important than the presidential elections to a point.
Mm-hmm.
We pick these people to represent our communities. So we pick these people to 14-year-old child with behavioral and mental on the spectrum that receives Medicaid. So the question for a child 14 with behavioral and mental, so a disabled child has the same requirements as a disabled adult. So there's actually a category that protects disabled children that if they're able to prove that child is permanently disabled, then the income limit for the parents is not there. So they can say somebody is they're at CHOP, they find out they have a terminal illness or something like that, they're in that category of protected disabled children.
Good.
So
See, there you go. Straight, direct answer. If you have any more questions, feel free to just pop them on up in there. We'll answer them as they come along. Again, here at cmpradio.net, the voice of Chester, Rachel Collins, the wonderful world of Rich Blye. We're here to give you the most insightful information that we can about this big, beautiful bill, how it affects you and how it affects me. We've talked about food stamps. We talked about eligible males that are able-bodied and able to work. We talk about the disabled. Let's get a little bit more into our elderly with some of the things that may change for them. Because for me, like children and elderly, like I'm able-bodied people, hey, go to work. You know what I mean? That's not
and
like that.
that's the logic here.
Yeah,
that's the logic.
But when it comes to our children and when it comes to those who have put the work in before and laid these paths, like literally, laid these paths, it should be something from society and its descendants to ensure that our people are taken care of. So how does this really affect them in any other kind of way, and what do we really need to look at as far as protecting our elderly with this bill?
So there's no direct, cuts to any program for the elderly or the disabled. So one of the big thing is you mentioned the home and community-based services. People are caring for their loved ones and they're getting paid for it. There's no direct cuts to that program, but with the increased, redeterminations and the other programs, you're going to see, a kind of like trickle down effect of maybe not getting those services approved as quickly as you can. Because again, these caseworkers are just getting more work with all of this.
Right.
And I don't think they're just going to magically become more caseworkers. Right. So home and community-based services is already a hard program to get because you have to have 5 years of bank statements. You're asking elderly people to go get 5 years of bank statements. Some banks charge. Mm-hmm. So that's where I work right now in the nursing home field. So I work with the business office managers. That same application for home and community-based services is what we do in a nursing facility. Wow. But my company will pay for the bank statements. Okay. I can request a waiver to get the bank statements. I have corporate contacts. These are regular people who can call Wells Fargo and ask for bank statements and might get charged $5 a statement. Right. All to get to the county assistance office and then not be able to get, approved through one question or another. They find something they want you to verify. Mm-hmm. I think with that, it's really important to, again, involve the senators, involve your state reps.
So is there a checklist for this? Because
yes.
You have to understand. Yes. I don't know. And again, I keep trying to tell people I'm not the expert. I don't know about this stuff. So I want to make sure that for people who need to know or don't understand, got Rachel Collins here. What's a good checklist for this? So
I was going to say I could do an entire segment on home and community-based services because I do it for work right now for long-term care. It's like I said,
heard that, JP?
Same application. I could literally go through the whole thing. The biggest part of it is 5 years of bank statements. They want to know what you did for the last 5 years. And who they're trying to catch is people who are making themselves eligible by giving money away. So somebody who has, $200,000 and they know they need Medicaid. So they're going to give their son $20,000. They're going to give their grandson $20,000. They're going to ditch that money and make the state pay for it. That is who they're trying to catch. Wow. The amount of people that is the situation for is so small. And most times it's on my side, the nursing facility. And you know what happens when they do that? They go to a lawyer. and the elder care lawyer protects the money for them. So these community folks are giving these bank statements, and your negative balance every month. Your regular elderly disabled folks living on SSI, SSD,
right,
living a regular life, but the process is still the same. You still need the bank statements. So what I would say is I can absolutely come up with a checklist, but that's the biggest thing is getting, if you have a life insurance policy, they want to know what the cash value is. If you have, anything, honestly, a vehicle, they exempt the first vehicle, but sometimes they make you prove it. They want your ID. They want your,
That's a lot to take care of your loved one by yourself.
But it's all to make sure that we're not paying somebody paying for somebody's home care who gave away money.
That's deep.
It is deep.
that's deep.
And sometimes when this is why I would encourage everybody to reach out to their caseworker. If you are, going through an application for home and community-based services, the long-term care, that's where I was at Medicaid in the end. The long-term care caseworkers do this every day.
Right.
So if you have bank statements, and my dad's a perfect example. My dad, inherited money a couple years ago from a house, and he received $100,000 and spent it. He was poor, never had money before, gave it away to the church, to the pizza shop, whoever he gave it to, right?
Right.
He got sick, and I was terrified. I was terrified for that Medicaid application because I knew them $10,000 withdrawals that he was doing to give to his church were gifting.
Yes.
That is absolutely what gifting is.
Yes.
Now, in that case, I would have, did my magic of he was healthy at the time of gifting,
right,
which is a big asterisk that.
Right.
Healthy at the time of gifting. I'm
right.
32 years old and healthy, knock on wood. I can do whatever I want with my money.
Right.
So if you can prove that, if you can prove that you were healthy and you were just living your life, and then you need Medicaid, you'll get Medicaid. But if you're just outright looking at someone's bank statement and you see their $10,000, $20,000 going on cruises, going this, that, and the third, gifting money, and then, oh my God, now I need Medicaid, that's where you're going to get caught up.
Okay. Wow. So
in a nursing home too.
So it's not just about cutting; it's also the fraud part
Correct.
of this. Okay.
Correct.
So, in your time and in your experience, how big is this fraud from things that you've seen? I mean, nothing specific now, because again, this is just abstract speaking.
So I think that when people think of, welfare fraud, I'm going to go there. They think of welfare queens. They think of the Cadillacs. They think of the lobster. They think of all that stuff. I can tell you right now that is not accurate. There are people who commit welfare fraud. I've known people who commit welfare fraud. The amount of the welfare fraud that's being committed is on a smaller scale. It's people knowing that they're right under the limit or right over the limit, so they submit a different pay stub.
Right.
Those kind of things. And it is, morally, it's just like stealing bread and milk from Wawa.
Right.
Morally, you know why they're doing it. You know why people are doing it. But I think the federal government especially wants to make sure they're not the ones picking up that bill. Like if Pennsylvania citizens need Medicaid or food stamps, Pennsylvania citizens need to pay for it. That is the logic.
Wow. So the government is getting out of the welfare business pretty much.
I don't think the government ever wanted to be in the welfare business, but yeah, that's structurally what is happening. So
this is you, I'm not speechless, but it's just the levels of stuff that's hitting me, and folks that I know that I'm going to talk to after this it's just mind blowing. The fact that something in such a short period of time, especially with what's going on in Philadelphia with the trash strike there, and then, folks have contract negotiations coming out all across Delaware County, this really has a big, profound effect on, the future of your health, your wealth, and the livelihoods of a lot of people.
So it does. And it's going to hit a lot of people. It's going to hit a lot of people over the next 10 years. There's already independent studies being done of the trickle down effect of, rural hospitals who most of their funding comes from Medicaid, rural hospitals in different states closing because of it. As much as it seems like it's happening at one time, this isn't something that just happened. This is something that, and not to get political, you go from a Republican president to a Democrat president to a Republican president. These are all things that, when Obama expanded the programs and then Trump kind of scaled them back and then, Biden expanded, like it's something that's always going to be give and take. As the as the president shifts. But
right.
I think the most important thing here is to, again, our communities need to stay together. Information is power. Like that
Right.
is not a cliche.
Sure,
Information. This is free information. I personally had to appeal my dad's Medicaid when he was getting Medicaid 5-6 years. I worked there and appealed it and won. So like the information is there. When just because they tell you that you're not eligible doesn't mean you can't go in the policy and look for yourself.
Right. And I just want to say this, folks, like, I do rely on Rachel for a lot of information because, I mean, not for anything, because, we are children of veterans. And I want to touch on the veterans piece on a minute for that. But we really do have a love for people. And we want you guys to get non-biased information that helps. So we're hoping that this segment helps you. If you need further information, like you said, get into that Compass app.
Absolutely.
Get into that Compass app.
Go onto the website, read the policy.
Read the policy. Get your affairs in order monthly, so that way you don't have to go digging for it.
Save your renewal date. When you get your Medicaid approval or your food stamp approval, on that approval notice where it tells you how much you're going to get, it has your renewal date on it. It used to be a year. Now it's going to be 6 months for a lot of people, but it has your date.
Right.
Put it in your phone. Set a reminder a month before that, hey, I got to make sure I downloaded my bank statement if I'm paperless or,
If you need help, there's 2 emails that you said.
Yes. So this is something that is a bit controversial, but I did it anyway. These emails are the email addresses
who are we without controversy?
These email addresses right here are for Chester and Darby. So there was an email for Chester and an email for Darby. There is a list of what town reports to what county assistance office. So I'm not sure if he's able to share the whole thing, but I'll make this the paper public as well. The towns in blue report to Chester. The towns in white report to Darby. So Upper Darby, all of your towns down near Upper Darby, Collingdale, Colwyn, Milbourne, they're Darby. You probably know who your district is at this point.
Right.
These email addresses go directly to that office. I would beg you, if you're sending your renewal in, you're sending your bank statement, your income papers, your rent letter, email it.
Yeah,
There's a better chance.
Let's get that email back over the screen.
Yeah, there's a better chance that your case will not close
we got the blue list
due to failure to provide.
Yeah. So,
but if it does, it comes with an appeal paper. Fill the appeal paper out and send it back in via the same email, and you can get your hearing. Either your hearing is going to give you more time to get what they're saying you need. It's going to, or there's a mutual agreement that, it's called a stipulated agreement. They'll say, hey, okay, we're going to give you 2 weeks to get your bank statement. Okay, now we need 2 weeks to open your benefits back up.
Right. So for Chester, that email is pwsvcdelcrosb@pa.gov. For the majority of Delco that gets serviced in the Darby area, that email is pwsvcdeldarby@pa.gov. Again, we wouldn't be the people that we are if we didn't throw a little bit of controversy up in here. We want to make sure that you have access to every person that can help you stay healthy, stay alive, and take care of your family. Again, this is not about politics anymore. This is about the people being united, helping other people so we can be united, so we can show how we do have love for one another in these communities. So
correct. And if you're eligible for the benefit, then you get the benefit.
Exactly.
Like a lot of people think, these are these free programs, and they are technically free programs. They're paid by taxpayers, but the majority of individuals on food stamps right now are working. You're paying taxes.
Yes.
So going off of the political thing of we're just giving out this free stuff, most of the people we're giving out the free stuff to are also paying the taxes. So, if you're eligible for the program, get the program.
Yes.
It's not meant to, like I said, the federal government's trying to, make sure that they're not the ones funding the bill. They're not the ones dealing with it. But either way, the requirements are there. And if you're eligible, you're eligible.
I don't want to say that because during COVID, I was not eligible for a stimulus check. I didn't get one. I was not eligible for anything, and then lo and behold, I got SNAP benefits for the first time in my life, and I sure did go shopping. I sure did. There was no shame. There was no shame in my game. And when they said it was over, okay, it's over. And just went ahead and tossed the card, and that was that, and got back to work. But we have to live, folks. Like, and there's no shame in living. Like I said, we see the queens, we see the people doing debauchery with the TikTok videos and stuff like that. And guess what? They're going to get caught. Because that's what the trap is,
or they're not, and life's not, and we go on the life's not fair.
Yeah,
At this point, though, like I said, like it's done. We are where we are. We pull together as a community, like we always have, and we get through it. So it's just, I think people should reach out to their churches, should reach out to community groups that they go to, should reach out to their state representatives. Like, we can't be quiet. And if anybody here knows my dad, knew my dad, we can't be quiet. We won't be quiet. I'm here.
Yeah, that's what happens when you are the child of someone who has served in the armed forces of America. We are built this way, unfortunately. Unfortunately. But, folks, I just want to say thank you to Rachel Collins for coming in for the show. Like, we put this together as soon as the Big Beautiful Bill was signed. We talked about this. She was actually on vacation.
I was.
And
I was reading.
And I'm like, and I was talking to JP. I said, JP, you're going to love her, because trust me, she's going to have her stuff together. And not even, 2 hours later, Rich, I need this, and I said, JP, here it comes.
First of all, Rich has been asking me for a while, and I was scared. And then when he said, let's do it, I said, listen, this is more important now. I mean, not that it wasn't important before, but, get the information out. And he said, Monday. I said, this Monday?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, my thing is that, again, folks, if you have something that you want to talk about, you want to lend your voice to the voice of Chester, and here at cmpradio.net, we need you. I would love to have anyone on my show on Mondays. I picked a good time before Monday Night Football, and guess what? It's still going to be a good time before Monday Night Football, because we'll just adjust the hour by 5:00, and everybody can still go to Monday Night Football when football season starts. But Monday's a great time. It's a great reset for everyone. There's really nothing going on. There's a lot of things that need to be discussed here in Delco. We need your voices. Okay, this is not a political place. This is not a non-political place. This is a space for everyone to come and talk about what concerns them, what's needed to be done, how we can unite. Even if you need to vent and air out some issues in a positive way, of course, in a non-destructive way, then come on, let's talk about it. Let's hear
because
it.
Because it's really about more than just us. It's about our kids and their kids and their kids. You know what I mean? It's just you got to do it together.
One thing I will want to touch on before we close out this segment is that I want to send prayers to the families in Philadelphia down in Eddy Street. I want to send a prayer to Azir Harris and his family, his father, and to his young son. Azir Harris was shot and paralyzed at 2019, and was a victim of the gun violence that we've been seeing. He became a gun violence advocate, even though he was in a wheelchair, and unfortunately his life was taken through that drama that happened with that we saw down in Philadelphia. I need to say this very gently. We are tired of losing lives. This is not about black, white, Democrat, Republican. Lives. As a father of 2 murdered sons, I am tired of hearing people make jokes about people losing their lives, like I've heard. And let me say a prayer for the families, prayers for the families in Texas, whose children, I don't care if it was an all-white camp. So what? I don't care about none of that. People lost their lives. They lost their children. They lost their homes. They lost their valuables. They lost their pets. They lost memories. Have a little empathy. A little bit, just a little bit. You can get back to hating Trump, Biden, Elon, and everybody you want next week. Next week. You can put it off. They ain't going nowhere. But how about today? How about tomorrow? How about the middle of the week? We come up with ways of honoring not only those who have stood up and fought and stood up and rescued and stood up to make our world better, but let's make ourselves better by not coming on social media and saying things harmful like these children deserve to die. To me, that's inhuman. That is inhuman.
Agreed.
To say that somebody needed to lose their life for the color of their skin. And don't give me that history jazz. We know it's been said in history. We got it. But you're perpetuating the negativity of that when you say that. And you put blemishes on us as we try to move forward positively with our counterparts of different races, creeds, colors, and ethnicity. We are not on that path of hate. You want to hate? Go hate someplace else. You want to hate the president? Go right ahead. You want to hate the vice president? Go right ahead. You want to hate the former president? Go right ahead. But this hate is killing our children. That's what they're seeing. This is a problem. The only people that can solve it is in our homes, in our places of business. Let's take a moment to just put a pause on the hate, please.
And I also want to just add my closing thought of the analogy of the ants in the jar. Mm-hmm. And you shake the jar up and then the ants kill each other.
Yes.
I would absolutely like to say that we are all we have more in common than we think we do. Mm. We really do. Race, politics, everything. We are the regular people. Like the rich people are the rich people. We're the regular people. And we need to treat each other like the regular people and stop blaming each other for these little things that become political issues.
Absolutely.
It just, we're a lot more alike than we think we are.
Absolutely. So our time.
And if any caseworkers are still my friends after all this, please feel free to tell me. I know I tagged a bunch of you. I'll delete the tags. Thank you.
I think with this, you explained the bill how other people couldn't get it explained before. Right. And you're also telling them how important it is to work with their caseworker, to call their caseworker. Mm-hmm. I don't think this was a situation where you put the caseworkers on blast. No. You know what I mean? So, I think the caseworkers should appreciate the fact that you gave your time to come.
It does help their job if you give complete information. Right. I'll give them that.
And that's what happens, right? We don't get complete information. We're filling out a form, right? I just applied for it because I'm not working. So the last 3 months I don't have any money coming in, right? So I'm trying to figure out, so my cousin and my people told me, fill out for welfare, but I made money, right? Mm-hmm. So I have 3 months, the summer months, where I'm not making any money. So I don't know what they're going to do. I'm waiting for a letter in the mail.
That's how, I was going to say, it's how a lot of people are. You're just kind of shot in the dark, and you see it, you go, oh, okay. People who are eligible fall through the cracks because they get a denial, and they're like, oh, that sucks,
And they don't go back after it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I appreciate you coming through here and giving this information. And I would say to anybody that has information, come share it. Right?
Absolutely.
You can't say anything until people really have true information. Right now, we're listening to everybody else say everything else, and it's not making any sense. And it's upsetting us, and we're getting mad, and we're already mad, and we're already short, and we're already frustrated.
It's hot outside.
Boy, so all these things are popping up, and you got people just yelling. And I saw that post earlier about the ants in the jar, and I say it all the time. I compare us to a dog kennel. Somebody comes in and kicks the cages, gets the dogs all riled up, and they open up the back hatches, and the dogs go out in the yard and fight each other because they're riled up, right? So this is what happens. But when we don't understand it, it continues to happen to the next generation and so on and so forth. So thank you for taking the time out to come out. And
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. We're about to come to an end of this segment of The Wonderful World of Rich Blye. Thank you to Rachel Collins for coming out. I want to thank CMP Radio. Hey, Pauline. Hey, of course she did. Hold on. Let me give us a very big shout out to Paul and Sabatino of Upper Darby, Inkwell Tattoos, but more importantly, Recovering Without Barriers. Right now,
the hero we do need.
The hero we do have.
Correct.
This is my sister in Christ. I love her for life. We met, 2018, 2019, and she has, with her group, Recovery Without Barriers, under the late, great Tina Hamilton, woohoo, and a host of other people, a host of caring community people that have gone down to 69th Street since 2019, faithfully. They used to do it 2 times a week. Now we do it faithfully. They do it faithfully 1 time a week. They also work with the Upper Darby American Legion Post 214 with our warming centers in the winter and our cooling centers in the summer. They are the ones that are responsible working with MVP recovery and other intake folks and getting people off the street into treatment and possibly onto roads of better recovery. They have
while treating them like human beings.
Like treating them like human beings, and this program, this nonprofit, these women and men, but primarily, I'm gonna say this how I feel it. These white women coming down here into the hood, and they rescued over 1,200 souls since they got started. Okay, so when people want to sit up here and colorize stuff, I want to say this to you very gently. Please stop. You have no idea how many helping hands that we have that are giving of themselves, that are not from your communities, that are not from your tribes, that are not from your families, that are not from your villages. Every time you knock at somebody else's hut, next time you knock at somebody else's igloo, next time you knock at somebody's wigwam, next time you knock at somebody's brick shelter, understand that how they had to build it to live was based upon their environment. But you got to have some empathy and understand that these are giving hands. Okay? These are giving hands. And let me tell you something. Where we live at in Upper Darby Township, we get no money. We get no support. We get no blankets. We get no pillows.
And trust me, they ask.
No mints.
And they ask. They tag.
We don't get a sheet of paper. We get nothing from them. When we had during the cooling, when we had our cooling center for 2 days to help our overtaxed libraries that are overtaxed. Don't get me wrong. The libraries did a tremendous job in keeping people cool and out of the heat. But they're only operating for so long, and they have to stretch resources that they're not getting from a township. We wanted to help our library. Upper Darby Township decided to label us as a non-UD site, meaning that because we're not township affiliated, or we're not township approved or township blessed, that they have to minimize our impact of help in the community by separating themselves from us, even though it says Upper Darby American Legion Post number 214 in big black letters on the building. This is what you have to decide, folks, whether you're going to follow leadership like that or follow the leadership of the people who give back. And that's my say for the rest of the day. I'll see you guys on the flip side.